As we think of the story of Noah and some stuff that maybe you didn't know from Noah's story, one of the things that emerges is that Noah had some crazy faith. Noah really demonstrated a tremendous faith in God. Now, to start with, let's make sure we understand what faith is. And our definition for this series is that faith is simply trust in God that leads toward action. And you can see three ways that Noah demonstrated that kind of faith. First of all, he honored God when nobody else did. And that took faith because Noah lived in a time when sin was the expected norm. We saw in last week's message how the world was characterized by wickedness, corruption, evil, violence, and that was pervasive. Everyone was affected by those things. And so it took great courage and faith on Noah's part to go against that flow. Genesis 6 says that Noah was a righteous man, that he was blameless, so he was like the only guy going God's way in that whole culture at the time. Now, there's some areas in our culture where sin has become the expected norm, and likewise, it takes courage and faith for us to go against the flow, but God gives us the strength to do that. 1 Corinthians chapter 10 reminds us that God is faithful, and He's provided a way for us to stand up against and to endure under any kind of temptation so that we can honor God when nobody else around us even is. The second way Noah showed great faith is he followed God even when it sounded impossible. There was two specific impossible tasks that God gave to Noah. One, he's supposed to build this boat with these ridiculous dimensions. And then secondly, he's supposed to find pairs of animals, of every kind of animal around the world, and to take care of them in this boat and provide food and to clean up after them and to manage and organize this whole floating menagerie. And the thing is even though those seem impossible, Noah succeeded. And he succeeded because he was willing to live by believing, not just by seeing. What his senses told him would not have led him to make the choices that he did, but he believed what God told him. God said there's going to be a flood, and even though there was nothing in Noah's experience to suggest that he knew anything about what that would be like, he trusted God with that. Now, I don't expect that any of us is going to get a message from God to build an ark, but there are plenty of things that the Bible already says in black and white that are unambiguous that we know that God wants us to do, and some of those are very challenging things. Things like being generous and sharing our faith and loving unlovable people can be very challenging to us as Christians, but God provides a way for us to succeed in those things. Philippians chapter 4 says, I can do all things through Jesus Christ who gives me strength. And so based on the strength of Christ and trusting in His strength in us, we can do whatever God tells us to do, even if it seems impossible at first. And then the third way that Noah showed this crazy faith is he trusted God when his future was uncertain. I can't imagine a future that was more uncertain than what Noah was facing, because the whole world was going to be different when the flood was over. God told him it was going to be bad, but to trust in Him, and God provided the way. And what Noah did was he went in the ark and he let God take care of him through that flood. And that reminds me of all the uncertainty that we have about the future. There's all kinds of issues where our future is unclear, and we're called by God to trust Him. And in the end, we see that it was Noah's faith in God that saved him from the flood, and it was Noah's faith in God that actually saved him for eternity. Hebrews chapter 11 says that Noah received the righteousness that comes by faith. So the biggest issue in the future is our eternal condition, and ultimately Noah was right with God by faith. So I'm inviting you to step into a life of faith. Faith in the challenges of your life, faith in the impossible tasks that God might give you, and faith for the future.